Hello, fellow Movie Crusaders, and welcome to another episode of the Weekend Crusaders. My name's Sean Wasserkrug, and with me, as always, is Brian Michaels. I feel like this is a really fun week. We have a lot of movies on here that move my camera a little bit there. We have a lot of movies that are favorites of mine, probably more so than Brian's. But I had a blast rewatching these 4 of these 5 this week, and then the 5th one. I think we had almost a legit first happen during it, which we'll get to because that's not what we're going to start with. Brian, how are you feeling about these 5?
I don't know what you're talking about because I think I like these movies more than you do, but that's just me.
I'm including my pick into that because I know you don't love my pick as much.
I don't know where you're getting that from at all. So
you told me you did this last week when I was talking about my. Oh no, I'm talking about the Revisited. I'm sorry, Revisited, not my pick. Revisited.
Oh, okay. I enjoyed all these movies for different reasons, mainly being the one that you're referring to. I still enjoyed the hell out of watching that, but we'll get into that.
This is one of those weeks where I kept forgetting what was my pick, what was the feature, because it's like I love 3
honestly,
so
it's like
much.
At least 3 of these movies I could have been in any slot and it wouldn't matter.
Oh yeah, this was a fun week, and I knew last week when we went through the list, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna enjoy rewatching these, mainly 2 of them in particular.
Yeah.
But we're gonna start with our feature. I know we don't normally start with our feature a whole lot, but we're gonna start with our feature this time out just to kind of spread things out here. And this is a film that I still feel like not enough people know about, or have heard of, or even knew that it was created. But this is one of those movies that, like, back when Brian and I first met each other almost 3 years ago now, we were talking about movies in general. And because, like I said, Brian has seen so many more films than I, which is weird because I thought I saw too many films. He's like, have you ever seen this movie? And I'm like, all I could remember was the 2 co-stars. Not the 2 leads, but the 2 co-stars in the movie. And I was like, is it that movie? He goes, yeah. He goes, it's really, really great. You should really check it out. And then I did. I was like, you're right. I love this movie. So when we came to our picks for this week, obviously my choice was like, clearly that's the feature, but let's not make that the feature so we can make this one more noticeable to people. And that's why we chose this one as our feature. And we are talking about the 2013 romantic comedy, What If? What If came out August 15th, 2013, had a budget of $11 million, had a weekend opening, I think the smallest weekend opening down the Weekend Crusaders so far, $854,364. It was number 17 its opening weekend, and it had a finished box office of $8.52 million, $3.49 million domestic, and $5 million international. This is the epitome of an independent film or an indie. This wasn't like a big studio or anything like that. But it is starring Daniel Radcliffe, aka Harry Potter, and it's one of those movies. It's just charming. It's fun. I really enjoy the cast. I mean, you got Adam Driver, and this was pre-Star Wars Adam Driver. So this is like when I think what was it, Girls?
He's in Girls, yeah, and I think he might have shown up in some bit parts in movies and stuff, but he wasn't a name yet. He wasn't.
Yeah, and then trying to pull up the cast here, but of course now that Marvel's What If's out, you put What If in, and like that's what pops up first.
Yeah.
But yeah, you got Adam Driver, you got Daniel Radcliffe, you got Zoe Kazan, who I never remember her or think about her, but then she pops up in movies, and I'm like, I like her. You know, and then of course Mackenzie Davis, who we both really like, and then I like Rafe Spall as well. I really love like this core 5 in this film. I mean, there's other solid. I think is it Jemima? I don't know, Roper, she plays Radcliffe's sister, and then Tommy Amber Prairie plays Gretchen. Chantry's sister. I really like the cast. I think it's a very charming comedy. It's funny, especially Adam Driver and Mackenzie Davis. And it's just kind of, I mean, it doesn't like break the mold of rom-coms. Like it follows the same kind of tropes, but you're following 2 leads in Radcliffe is Wallace in this film. Wallace and Chantry, who are just kind of socially awkward in a sense because they have a particular kind of humor and stuff, but they mesh perfectly. Like they are definitely two awkward puzzle pieces that don't fit well with other pieces, but they just match perfectly. But she's obviously with another man, Rafe Spall's Ben, and Wallace is still kind of recovering from a bad breakup. But they obviously have this friendship, and it's just a very enjoyable film. And it really kind of shows, and I think Daniel Radcliffe, a lot of people just can't get over the Harry Potter of it all, but he is such a great actor. He goes out and he just does certain things. Like obviously you got Swiss Army Men, you got Guns Akimbo. There was a Jungle.
Jungle. He also did one called Horns, which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah, and then he went the rom-com route with this, and then he's on Miracle Workers right now. Which anyone who's watches Miracle Workers, his last week he did this like burlesque show dance of Should Be Coming Around the Mountain. Oh my god, if you guys have not checked that out, check that out. It is awesome. But yeah, Brian, you were the one who turned me onto this film. What are your thoughts on What If?
I did. Now, this is a movie that when it first came out, when I first heard about it, it was still called The F Word. And it actually got released as The F Word in a lot of foreign countries. But in America, it ended up getting released as What If. And I didn't really know much about it like you, besides Daniel Radcliffe and Zoe Kazan in the leads, and it was a rom-com. It didn't open in theaters around me. I know it actually opened the previous week in like 20 theaters, and then the week we're talking about now is when it went wide, but even then it was like 700 theaters. So it still didn't play anywhere near me. And so I think I saw it when it first hit like, DVD or VOD or whatever.
Yeah, that's what I did.
And so I'm like, you know what, I'm going to check this out. Why not? I like, the people in it, the ones that I know. And so I watched it and I just immediately fell in love with this movie. And of course I became this evangelist, like trying to tell everyone I know, you got to watch this movie. You got to watch this movie. And now we're to the point where, especially in our community here, there's a ton of our people have seen it, and pretty much everyone I've talked to that has seen it loves it, but there still are not enough people that have seen it. All of you should go watch this movie.
Yeah, you're like me when Sleeping with Other People came out, and I'm like,
I agree with you on that one
see
too.
this film. It's so good. Or Mr. Right.
Yes.
If you guys have never seen Mr. Right with Sam Rockwell and Anna Kendrick, or Sleeping with Other People with Allison Brie and Jason Sudeikis, check both those two films out. But we're talking about What If. But I feel you on that. Like you find this little diamond that no one seems to know about. You just want to go to the hilltops and say, "Well, everyone watch this movie." But yeah.
So that's actually one of the things I like about Letterboxd is I can at least within my circle, I can like tell people watch this movie. I agree with you completely on Daniel Radcliffe. I'm not a big Harry Potter fan. This does not come as a surprise to anyone who knows me. But I really like what he has done with his post Harry Potter career. Like you said, he's doing all kinds of stuff. He's working with good directors. He's working in different genres, and I think he is trying to do things that because he doesn't need the money. He's not doing it to be successful.
Oh no, he'll live off Harry Potter money for the rest of his life.
Oh yeah, so he's just doing things that interest him as an actor and as a person, and you can tell that because he does movies like this, and you can just tell that he enjoys the role and it's really well. He surrounds himself with good people, which then brings us into one of the best things about it is Adam Driver and Mackenzie Davis as kind of the supporting roles. Oh my gosh, do I love those two people. Let's just leave it at sex and nachos. But
that is easily probably the best quote. It's into the trailer, so it's not really like a spoiler. It's like, I just had sex and now I'm eating nachos. This is
the best day ever. And then later I was like, you totally killed my sex nacho high. But those two supporting characters. I mean, Adam Driver is a guy who he plays a lot of serious roles. It seems like, at least as of late. But really, I love him most like in this and This Is Where I Leave You and movies like that, where he's just having fun because he is a great comedic actor. He's just
he's a snarky asshole, but he plays it so well.
Yeah, and Mackenzie Davis is another one who I first met. Well, I didn't meet her. I first was introduced to her through *Halt and Catch Fire*, and then I actually kind of sought out everything I could see, and she showed up in *Blade Runner* and these other things. And then, of course, in this movie, I think she is just a wonderful actress as well. And obviously, we love *Terminator*, which apparently 10,000 people know. But yeah, I mean, the cast is great. I think the writing is great, which surprised the hell out of me because when I looked to see, I'm like, I loved this movie. What else has this writer done? Because I like the dialogue and the story. This writer, the only other major feature film he's done is adaptation of the video game Alone in the Dark as directed by Uwe Boll. So
Yeah.
I don't know where he is, why people. I mean, obviously this wasn't a box office hit, but everyone who's seen this movie loves it. Somebody needs to get this man, let him write another movie. I mean, besides that, I think he did Most Valuable Primate 2. So it is what it is. But yeah, this is just one of those movies that I think that if more people would watch it, if more people knew about it, I think it would get a huge following. I understand it didn't get a big release, so it's not like a one of the all-time great rom-coms. But honestly, ask me, it is. It is. Box office and things aside, it's great.
It's almost like a less snarky When Harry Met Sally, because it's always about them trying to they're just friends. They're trying to be friends. Obviously, one of them has a little more feelings than the other, and stuff like that. And then everyone's just like, you can't do it. You can't do this because then all this shit. And I love, that's probably one of my favorite conversations in the film is when he's talking to Adam Driver about like he wants to do it. And he's like, well, there's option A, you do this. Well, that makes me this. Okay, well, there's option B. Well, then that makes me this. Well, then there's option C. Like that is a well thought out like dialogue sequence because it's one of those like in a comedy, it's just, you just gotta go for it. Or but no, like this is a well constructed like this is how I would have a conversation with one of my friends if they had this issue of like you have multiple pathways you can take through this. Option A, which leads down this path. This one leads on this path. And it's not just like a straight up like you have the choice to do however you want to do it. I'm going to give you
either way. It has its pros and definitely cons.
Exactly. I really love that dialogue between them. And Zoe Kazan, I've liked her ever since I saw her in The Big Sick. She just kind of has that quirk, kind of like is it Imogen Poots?
Imogen Poots, yeah. Yeah,
like her and them, they both have this like kind of unique quality that I think it really works, especially in a rom-com type setting. Same thing with is it Lily? It's not Lily Collins. Baby Driver, and Yesterday.
That's Lily James.
Lily James, not Lily Collins. Lily James. She just works for me, and especially with someone like Radcliffe and like I said, Mackenzie Davis, like you. I saw her on *Halt and Catch Fire*, and I just fell in love with her as an actress. And then she also did what was a young adult, the young adult that she did with Charlize Theron.
Yeah.
But yeah, the story is like I say, it doesn't like break the mold of what a rom-com is by any means, but it's just enjoyable. It's well written and it's funny. It's a funny film. If you guys have not seen Radcliffe in a comedic role where he is playing basically the lead in a rom-com, then this is definitely something you should check out. And if you're a Harry Potter fan, then you should definitely check it out because you can see Radcliffe has more range. Obviously, if you want to see him with range, watch any of the other movies I listed earlier because dude makes some choices to like be different and unique, and they're not bad choices. I love every choice he makes. Anytime I'm thinking like that's not gonna work, he like Swiss Army Man, that should not have worked.
That should
never have worked.
And instead, it's one of the only A24 movies that I like. So
and it works. And Guns Akimbo should have been just fucking stupid. And it was one of my surprise hits of last year. Yeah. And What If is such a just fun, like a warm hug of a rom-com.
Well, and what I love about it, I think what makes it so appealing, at least to me, and probably to you as well, is that it is funny. It's a rom-com, but some rom-coms are like over the top and goofy and like zany hijinks. And this one is like it's funny. It's definitely funny, but it feels real. Especially like you're talking about the relationships like between like him and Adam Driver, and it's like they joke around, but he's like got serious advice for his friend. And then there's like the moment where like they kind of force them into a situation on the beach, and then next morning they're all pissed off at them, like how dare you put us in that situation. It just feels like real relationships.
There's a lot about this film that just feels very real. Like near the end when Zoe's character becomes a huge fucking hypocrite, and then she eventually calls herself out on it. Yeah. And same thing goes with they realize at the end how Ben's character is treated. Like because he's not a bad it's not one of those rom-coms where like her boyfriend's a jerk or anything like that. Her boyfriend's not a jerk. Her boyfriend's a good guy. He doesn't treat her badly by any means, or at least we're not portrayed to see him treat her badly. And even Adam Driver, when they do the said prank that you talk about, he realizes like, hey, that was a dick move. I apologize. Like, these are characters that are flawed, but can call out their own shit and realize what they're doing is messed up. Same thing goes with like the one moment where we meet his ex, and she's like, you know, she tries to call him out on something, and it's just like, look, I didn't ever say anything about you. Like, I didn't talk bad about you. I never did anything like that. And it was just that awkward moment, because in a lot of rom-coms or a lot of stuff like that, it would be kind of very one-sided. And this movie lives in that gray area, and it teeters that gray area perfectly. And I think it's one of those rom-coms that, yes, it's kind of paint by numbers by a certain situation, but the way it is written and the way it is portrayed by these actors, it does it in a way that feels unique and feels, like you said, real. And that's what I think why you and I really, really enjoy this one. I think like most people who actually give this movie a shot really enjoy it overall. But yeah, What If? I don't believe it's on anything.
Prime. Amazon
It is
Prime.
on Prime. So, and it's free. So you guys have no reason
No excuse.
not to
You know
check
what?
this out.
Pause this. Go watch that. Come back.
I'm not going to say that, but you should definitely watch this after you watch us talk about the rest of these films. Yeah, it's free. There's no excuse for you guys not to check this out. Check out What If. You guys are not be disappointed. And like I said, if you guys can look up the Daniel Radcliffe dance from this past week's Miracle Workers, you will not be disappointed. We're going to move on now to our revisited film. And the reason why I got flipped up, because I thought this was my movie, because this is totally my movie. But because we put What If in the feature film, our regular feature got moved to my pick, and like I said, everything got jumbled. This film, there are, I would say, 5 movies that define my childhood. You got Jurassic Park, Jaws, Land Before Time. I'm blanking on the 4th one right now for some reason, and then this film. So I'll say 4 films that define my childhood. This movie, I love this film. I am not a fan of the Goonies. I've never really got the Goonies. I never really liked the Goonies. This is my Goonies. This is my Goonies film. Shut up. I love this film. I love that even though it's PG-13, it is very kind of an R type of film, especially for the 80s. I unabashedly love this film. And I said this last week, I was so afraid to go back and revisit this movie because I didn't know if it was going to age well or not. And going back and rewatching it, it just still hit for me. Like, I can tell the certain things, like now with my critic brains, like that probably wasn't good or that probably could have been done better. But it is still one of those movies that is just kind of has that special place in my heart. And because this was my childhood watching this film. And we're talking about the 1987 children's horror film, The Monster Squad. The Monster Squad came out August 14th, 1987, had a budget of $12 million, had a weekend opening of $1.9 million. It was number 12 its opening weekend, and had a finished box office of $3.76 million. If you guys have not figured out this trend, these are all underrated kind of indie films that didn't really make a lot of box office. All of them, I think, are on this list, are like that. But they are loved, especially by me and Brian. Monster Squad. I mean, there's a legitimate cult following. If you want to describe a cult film, Monster Squad is a cult film. It's a cult classic. When literally there is a documentary called The Wolfman Has Nards that is out there, that is the epitome of a cult following, a cult film. Are any of these stars in this film big names now? No, they're not. These are a lot of these people, because I remember clicking on the names while watching the movie. None of them really went out and became big things for the most part. I think the biggest name is probably Frankenstein, because he was on we talked about him on the
character actors like Tom Noonan, Mary Ellen Trainor, the same mom from Goonies. She's in it, but it's no big actors now.
But yeah, there's no big actors in this. But it is literally we literally just described this film on what they should have done with The Mummy, which was Brendan Fraser versus the Universal Monsters. And that is what this movie is. It is a bunch of kids who are monster fan club kids going against the Universal Monsters. Dracula, the Wolfman, Creature from the Black Lagoon, Frankenstein, and the Mummy. And it's just them trying to save the day. That's the epitome of the film. And it's 82 minutes. It's so boom, boom, boom. get out of there. It's got blood. It's got some real, brutal kind of death scenes in a way for a 87 PG-13 film. And yes, the dialogue is very 80s, and the acting is kind of but I enjoy this film unabashedly. Brian, Monster Squad.
So Monster Squad is a movie that should have been a favorite of my childhood. I mean, I was obviously a kid who was like, super into the Goonies. As a kid, I loved like the monsters, things like that. And so I don't know how, but I went like 20 years without watching this movie. I don't know how it slipped through the cracks. I mean, I heard of it. It's just something I never happened to watch. And then, so when I finally watched it a couple of years ago, and I wish I had watched it as a kid, because I think I would have been in the same boat as you, because I think I would have loved it as a kid. I think I would have still seen it as inferior to Goonies, because it's definitely a Goonies wannabe. There's whole scenes that seem like they're copying Goonies, and there's actual scenes copying E.T. and some other things too. But it's so it's obviously kind of a knockoff, but it still would have been a ton of fun.
I wouldn't call it a knockoff. It's doing its own thing here.
It said, hey, let's take the Goonies and we'll put it in with monsters.
I wouldn't call it a knockoff. I'm going to defend the knockoff statement.
But like you said, the thing that sets this apart, for better or worse, is that this movie, it doesn't feel, it feels like a family film, but there's parts of it that you're very much not a family film. I actually went to watch this, and I was going to let my kid watch it with me. I'm like, I'm not sure how I feel about this, because this is a couple of years ago when he was even younger, and because there's a lot of stuff in there that just whether it be scenes or pictures of violence or kind of some of the sexual innuendo or things like that, some of the dialogue, and you're like, really, this wasn't really aimed at kids. And I think you can blame that entirely on the fact that this is co-written by Shane Black.
Which is another reason why you should love this movie.
Exactly. Well, at the time, I didn't know who Shane Black was. He actually, I think this is the first movie he wrote that got released. He wrote Lethal Weapon came out the same year, but I think he wrote this first. It was him and his writing partner, Fred Decker, who actually is also the person who directed this movie, Fred Decker. So they made this movie, and it's definitely got that kind of Shane Black sense of humor to it. It hadn't quite refined its edges yet, but kind of in a lot of the dialogue and the humor, it definitely has that kind of Shane Black feel to it. But that doesn't necessarily translate to a family film. So I think that's kind of what kind of makes this entertaining, but it's also, I think, what kind of hurt this film from getting wider acceptance and wider release. Now, like you said, it became a cult film because I think people that loved it back then still love it. I think that more people have found it in the years since then. And so, like you said, it's truly the definition of a cult film. But I mean, you've already kind of covered most of what I was going to say. It's got its rough edges. There's some really bad acting in this movie.
It's because most of it are child actors who didn't really amount to much.
Exactly.
I think the most notable named actor is one of the bullies, is the older brother from the Wonder Years.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the most notable name I think I recognize out of the cast.
There's definitely other faces I remember, like the German guy who translates for him. I don't know his name offhand, but
no, he's literally credited in the film as Scary German Guy. He's never given a name.
But I'm saying I've recognized that actor from other things. I couldn't tell you his name though.
Yeah, and I recognize like the dad and Wolfman and things.
Yeah, I will say the Dracula. Looking back on it, I swear to God, I'm like, was that Garrett Dillahunt? It's not. It just looks a lot like him. But when I first before I'd watched the movie, I'm like, is that him? But no, it's not. He'd be way older by now.
Yeah, he'd be like a teen. He'd be like Patrick or Rudy or whatever in this film.
So I mean, it's definitely very 80s, from everything from the soundtrack to just the clothing and everything about it. But it is what it is. It's fun. It's it's the kind of thing. You can watch around Halloween, have some fun. I would be careful if you're young children watching it, but for the most part, anybody can watch this movie.
I think by today's standards, I think kids will be fine with it.
Yeah, there might be some conversations like "Daddy, what's a virgin?" things like that, but you can just
what's a virgin?
But yeah, I mean, it's fun. It never was a favorite for me, and it still isn't like I wouldn't call it a favorite for me now. I think if I had watched it earlier in my movie career and back when I was a kid, I would have a deeper affinity for it, but I still thought it was fun. And
this is one of those two where you let them do, for the most part, practical effects, like when Dracula gets shot when he's a bat and he's like injured, and he's got like half bat, half Dracula. I think Wolfman looks solid. Creature from Black Lagoon looks great in the film. Frankenstein looks solid in this film as well. I mean, yes, you do see like when there's multiple bats on screen, you can clearly tell it's the string bats that people are just above doing.
It's the kind of thing you watch though. I mean, if it got released today like that, then yeah, you'd laugh it off the screen. But you look at this and you're just like, okay, it's the 80s.
Yeah, it had a small budget, and it's just it is what it is. And I think it's solid. Like I said, in and out in 80 minutes, solid story. And it was one of those nice 80s films that got its own song, the Monster Squad song.
I don't know if that's a good thing, but okay.
No, but it was like just like the 80s where like all 80s movies had their own songs for their titles, like Ghostbusters and all that. Monster Squad got its own song, which I thought was just like, okay, cool. That's cool. That's how you know it's the 80s, because Monster Squad got its own song in the film.
Which Sean's going to sing for us, right?
No. Monster Squad. But yeah, I enjoy this film. There's some great like one-liners in this film as well. And I think like by today's standards, with Stranger Things, Super 8, if they come out with this today with the Universal Monsters, this would be a huge success, because obviously they probably would have had better child actors and stuff like that. Which is like, if they ever remade this, I would be like, it does need to be remade with a better budget. But is it going to be better than the original? I don't know. But I think this is one of those films that they could do a remastered version of today if they stayed practical with it and didn't CG the werewolf and creature from the Black Lagoon and stuff. Then this could be like an homage or an homage to the 87 film, and it could work by today with the Stranger Things vibe and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's got some great liners in it, and I enjoy it. I mean, who doesn't want to be the fat kid who cocks the gun and gets kind of the one up on the bullies? But yeah, I enjoy this film probably way more than I should. But like I said, this was a childhood film for me. But yeah, Monster Squad. It is. Is it on?
It is on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, it's on Prime, so it's free again. No reason not to watch it.
And Wolfman's Got Nards is available for free to watch on Vudu, on Tubi TV, and on Hoopla.
So definitely check that out. It is one of my favorite childhood films, and I was so happy to go back and revisit it and still have the love for it that I did from all the way back when I was a kid. Next, we are going to our stinker movie. Was this a first-time view for you two?
You know what? I thought I had seen this movie before, but I started to watch this. I'm like, there's no way in hell I've seen this movie, because I would remember this shit. This, like I said, and this is a first that we had in this while watching this. We were watching it, and I think we were both just like, this is just all over the place. Like, there's not, like, we don't know what's going on. Like, the dialogue's just all over the place. And then something happened, and it literally let out me. Brian had his head down because I think you were looking something up on your phone, and I just literally went, "What the fuck is happening?" And you were like, "What?" And yeah, it's like I think I was looking up, like, we recognized an actor or something. So I'm like, oh, I want to see what that is. And so I'm looking something up, and right as you said that, I saw these colors on the screen, and I just yelled, I'm like,
"Don't tease it yet." That's the tease into it.
Yeah.
And this led to probably one of the most humorous moments in a stinker film. Now we talked about the this ranks right up there with the non-basketball jokes, right when the basketball jokes should be used in Double Team, and in Dragon Ball Z Evolution when he does the head slide on the car that breaks the car and nothing. This tops that. This legit tops that. And we are talking about the stinker film of the same name of a beloved comic book franchise. We are talking about 1998's The Avengers. The Avengers came out August 14th, 1998, had a budget of $60 million, had a weekend opening of $10.3 million. It was number 3 its opening weekend, behind Saving Private Ryan in its 4th week, and How Stella Got Her Groove Back in her 1st week, and finished with a box office of $23.38 million. This film, this was the first time watch for me, obviously, because I wouldn't have had that reaction if I had not seen this film already. But, I mean, you've got Uma Thurman, you got Ralph Fiennes, you got Jim Broadbent, and then you got, obviously, my namesake, Sean Connery, in this film. Yeah, this movie is abysmal. It is awful. Yeah, Brian, take it away.
Yeah, so I mean, this movie, I don't know where to start in this. So it's based on a 1960s TV show, a British TV show, which I remember being on TV in reruns when I was a kid, but I don't think I ever watched it. So I knew pretty much nothing about it. But this came out. I get it. You know that at the time they're starting to churn out a lot of TV show adaptations. So why not do this one? Uma Thurman. This is post Pulp Fiction, so at least she's kind of taken off. I mean, she'd done some other movies that she'd kind of become kind of a name for herself. Ray Fiennes. I'm not sure exactly where he was in his career. This is after Strange Days and obviously after Schindler's List and some stuff. And so he's a solid actor. I mean, he's a good guy. The director is a guy who did National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. He did Benny and June, which I think is actually a pretty underrated Johnny Depp, Mary Stuart Masterson rom-com kind of thing. So I'm like, it's got all the pieces are there, right? And of course, Sean Connery. But yeah, I don't know what the fuck to think of this movie. So just general thoughts. It was mostly started out kind of boring, and the whole movie.
We were both like, are we watching fucking Downton Abbey?
Well, there was a lot of that stuffy kind of conversations. It was these stuffy British conversations like Downton Abbey. We're like, this is just boring. So I mean, at one point they're driving in a car and they have a tea machine in the car and they're drinking tea as they're driving around, and it's just that kind of movie. And it was just alternating like stuffy conversation, mindless random action scene, and then this forced banter, kind of sexual innuendo constantly through the entire movie between the two of them, which they met each other that day and so they were just like having this conversation. I'm like, okay, whatever. So I mean, just generally speaking, there's that. And as the movie went on, it got more and more ridiculous. And like I said, it got our attention. I started enjoying watching the movie, but not for the right reasons, because I'm like, we're just laughing at the movie for the whole last half of it. And we'll talk about the specifics of it, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those things where, like, I think in the beginning I was like, so is this like a TV show version of Kingsman? Because like he's got the suit, he's got the umbrella, he uses the umbrella. Because the beginning of the film,
there's the tailor shop they're based out of.
Yeah, they're in a tailor shop. But at the beginning of the film, he's like walking down the street and then just gets straight up attacked by a bunch of people and then just keeps moving on. And this was the first time where, like, there's this one part where I literally go, Brian, you got to stop that and rewind it, where there's this lady pulling up with a stroller and you hear, wah, wah, and he stops and he looks at her. And then she just pulls out, like, 3 knives and goes, no aim, misses him by a mile, and then just runs away with the baby stroller.
Well, like, what the funniest part for me was you hear the wah, wah, she reaches into the stroller, pulls out these knives, throws them randomly, misses him. And then when she runs off, you still hear the baby crying. So I'm like, is there actually a baby in there or not? I don't know.
It's the most awkward, though, because she just goes and throws it like that. Like, how did you? Yeah, and the run is just awkward. I'm just like, what the fuck is this? And you find out that it's like a whole training sequence and shit. Yeah. But it's just like, that's how the movie starts. That is legitimately the first scene of the film.
For the first half hour, we're going, when does this take place? Because they're driving on this old action.
This is the epitome of I told Brian, I go, now you know how I felt when I watched It Follows. Because he's getting frustrated, not knowing what the time frame is. I was like, you right now? Because he kept trying to look shit up, and he couldn't figure it out. I go, where you're at right now is how I felt watching all of It Follows. And he was like, oh my God, I know how you feel now. Because it was driving him insane. And I don't think we ever got the answer. I don't think
it's definitely modern day. It's definitely modern day because, I mean, we're watching this movie and they're driving like these old, like, I don't know, 30s, 40s cars.
Yeah, like pull a lever to get the car.
Even like a lot of the buildings and the interiors of the houses and stuff look super old. But then there's like definitely some 60s style of clothing going on. So like, oh, maybe it's the 60s, like the TV show. Maybe they went with that. But then they're like using computers and things, and I'm just like not even like, old fashioned, like modern day computers and technology all over the place. And so I'm like, I guess it's modern day, but literally like the cars they're driving are either 60s cars or 40s cars. And I'm just like, I have no idea what's going on. So I don't know.
Yeah. And like literally like the movie starts and like they're trying to find Uma Thurman because they think that she's a part of this, like assassination or jailbreak or some shit like that. Mm-hmm. And they get her and she's like
sabotaging this weather shield.
Yeah, and they're like,
project.
she's like, that wasn't me. Well, I guess we'll find out. And then the next scene, they're in the tailor shop and they just start having a random sword fight, which is basically foreplay. And it's like, we're both going, this is so not the right place to have a sword fight. Like
The
right
top
now.
of the stairs.
On top of the stairs with like no space, and they're just running up and down the stairs in between pares, going, flirt, flirt, flirt. And I'm just like, I don't understand what the fuck's going on. Then they get in the car, and she literally pulls a button, and it gives him tea. He drinks him, and you're like, that tea would be all over the place on him right now, the way he was driving. And then they like go to like this like house, and then the weather just randomly starts changing, and like she's like in this like garden area, and then Connery shows up, and we're like, and Connery's just kind of cheesing it up.
Well, the first time you see Connery, he's playing with his organ, and
He
he has
is,
this
yes, he's
picture of
definitely
her,
playing.
which
Yeah.
is never explained why he has this picture of her up there, by the way.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't know her or anything as far as we know. Now, we knew there was this other doppelganger out there somewhere, which it turns out is some kind of cloning thing, but we still don't know why he has a picture, because as far as we know, there's no romance, no familial relationship, no idea what's going on with that. But yes, he's just doing that. We find out the weather is a result of he's basically turned this weather shield into basically a weather controlling weapon where he's going to hold the world hostage and make them buy their weather from him, basically, or he'll destroy their countries. So there's that.
He also turns into Bill Cosby at one point.
Oh, yes, the Bill Cosby of it
Bill
all.
Cosby of it all.
Yeah, he is straight up roofing people, and he's going to be doing things to them while they're out.
Like, he was literally about to, I think, rape Uma Thurman, and then, like, someone knocks on the door. And it was just like, we're like, oh, wow, this movie is going to go there. And then...
And it wasn't even like our interpretation. That's what was happening.
Well, yeah, like, he was about to unbutton her blouse and like, start to do stuff. And then, like, someone knocked on the door and stopped him, and then she managed to escape from that point. But the epitome of this, and we're wondering how the hell did Sean Connery sign off on this?
And how the hell did I not hear about this, by the way?
Yeah, how did we also not hear about this still? And this is what caused me to go, what the fuck? And just go crazy nuts. Is because we're both just kind of getting very annoyed with the film. We're about... 30, 40 minutes.
This is going to be one of those stinkers. Yeah.
Yeah, like we're annoyed because there's no structure. It's all over the place. It's just random. And then all of a sudden we go into this boardroom and everyone in there is dressed up as giant teddy bears. Different colored teddy bears. And at the center of it is Sean Connery dressed as this giant teddy bear.
It's like a teddy bear picnic. It's like a meeting of Beanie Babies at a conference table.
Exactly. They look like a bunch of Beanie Babies. And like Brian goes, did this just turn into a furry orgy? Like, what the fuck is going on? And I was like, I don't know, but I am immediately invested in this now. It's just like, and like all of a sudden, like he's like, I'm having you all wear these suits so we can hide your identity. But then he takes off his freaking helmet.
He's like, you know who I am, but you won't know who each other are. But that's just it. He's like, we do this to hide our identities. You couldn't have just worn a plain mask of some kind.
Like, what in the eyes wide shut bullshit is this crap?
It's like, for some reason he picks these big. Not only are they ridiculous,
but they can't move well.
But they're not practical. And there's people later on like trying to attack him wearing these things, and later on you find, and throughout the movie, that's the best part, is like random scenes throughout the movie, there'll be like a teddy bear run across the back, or there'll be like a string of dead teddy bear people laying around outside.
And then one of them jumps from like high above on like kind of thing. But there's only one part, like during this board meeting, he's like, if there's anyone who doesn't want to be a part of this, let us know now. Nothing bad will happen to you. And like two teddy bears raise their hands, and he like shoots blow darts at him and hits him in the shoulder, and they die. And we're like, there's no way those touched.
The blow darts go through those because they're big, bulky ass
costumes. They're thick as shit. There's no way those pierce the skin, and it's just, and then it becomes a huge chase sequence where Uma Thurman and Ralph Fiennes are chasing these teddy bears, and you just like. First off, there's weird camera choices. Like there's like weird fast zooms and like
a lot of this looked like a 70s TV show, the way it was filmed, 70s or 80s TV show. It was not in a good way.
But then you just see a random teddy bear just running away and shit. And then you got Eddie Izzard, who was in last week's Mystery Men, who I was excited to see. He doesn't say any words in the film until right before his character dies, and it's like, oh, fuck. Yeah. that was the only dialogue he got in the entire film. But yeah, these teddy bears literally obviously perked Brian and I up because we were like, okay, now we have to see where the fuck this goes. And then, of course, after the teddy bears disappeared, we were just like, well, the teddy bears get this movie at least a star because of the utter ridiculousness of it. And they were like, we just need more teddy bears. And we don't get them again until like the end of the movie when they're all like laying there dead. But then we got like giant robot bees in a chase sequence, which is like
they're like these drones attacking him. Which first of all,
how is this practical? Like, why are they bees?
Why are they shaped like bees? Because it's not like they like are disguised as
No,
bees.
they're
giant
like
machines.
fucking big.
Yeah.
And it's like, why are they bees? Like, there's no point to this. And then there's like one scene where like Sean Connery's flirting with Uma Thurman, and like it's got like this big like lens trying to make the plants look bigger, but he steps in front of it, so he looks like a big bobblehead talking to her. It's just weird choices and director decisions that just make utterly no sense. And then we get the, I guess, typical kind of ending where we're like, they're going to have a sword fight, aren't they? Like, yeah, they're going to sword fight. And, like, it just, like multiple levels and water splashing all over the place. I'm just like, they must be miserable shooting this scene. Because this scene does not look fun to shoot. Like, the whole time I'm watching it, I'm just like, I guarantee you, if Connery and Fiennes are actually shooting this scene, they hate this right now. This is, like, I would be miserable shooting this scene. That is how annoying.
I'm guessing they were miserable in this movie by day too. Like, what do we get?
Oh yeah, it's just, it's all over the place and not in a good way. And literally, if it wasn't for the teddy bears, we would have just like been hating the hell out of this film. But when those teddy bears popped up, we were like at that point, like we're watching and Brian's doing a deep dive into the teddy bear scene and shit. And he pulled up a video of Connery talking about the teddy bears, which was right around the time that he was trying to promote the film. So naturally,
he wasn't giving his true thoughts on it.
Yeah, that's he was like, "Oh, that scene is great," and I'm at the head of the table. And we're like, "Oh, bullshit, Connery! Fuck you! You did not enjoy that one bit. You're probably going, what the fuck?" Yeah, we realized why this is considered one of the worst films out there. We had never seen it, and we were gonna like, and that's the other thing too. The poster picture, Uma Thurman, she's dressed like Black Widow.
Yeah, the Black Widow outfit with I will say the world's biggest belt buckle.
And she she only wears this for like the last like 10 minutes of the film.
Well, the thing is, we got to the point in the movie where I realized, I'm like, wait a minute, the only one that's worn that outfit is the clone, like the bad one. It's not even her, and they put her on the cover art. But then all of a sudden, I guess, did she steal her outfit or what? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly, because she wasn't wearing that, and then all of a sudden she's wearing the costume. We're like, all right, well, she's wearing it
for no reason. It's not protective. She just thought, you know what, I want to wear stretchy leather now while you go around in your suit.
And she's also, and I kept saying this, and this kept bugging me. She's putting on to me her best Emily Blunt impression, because the whole time she's trying to talk with a British accent, she sounds like Emily Blunt. And then Fiona Shaw. She plays Father, which I also know her from Harry Potter. And I'm like, she looks like Alan Cummings in Josie and the Pussycats. Like it's just weird, and it's like it just is an awkward performance by her as well. And Ralph Fiennes just looks like he doesn't know what the hell's going on. He's just reading the script and just kind of going. And Broadbent is just being really weird in a wheelchair. It's like he's
kind of being Broadbent. He's kind of the same.
Yeah, he's being Broadbent, but it's just the movie is randomly all over the place. Everyone's just like, I can't tell which Uma Thurman's Uma, and I was like, the bad clone has longer hair than the good Uma. This is not hard to figure out. She has longer hair, so if her hair is long, she's the bad one. If her hair is shoulder length, she's the good one. I figured that out like in 2 quick snappets. It's like longer hair, shorter hair. That's fine. Yeah. And it's just this movie is a mess. But if you want to see teddy bears, because I remember what it was. I made the one crack where it was like, we got to do the one thing that'll stop him. And I go, he's gonna go to a Build-A-Bear. And Brian just lost it. I was like, yes, a good zinger. And because like honestly, that would have only made this movie that much better.
That's what we said. We said this movie needed more bears. Because yeah, I mean, it could have been horrible. It was like we said, I would definitely rate it a 5-star movie, or 0 if you could.
Yeah. But
the teddy bears alone, I decided it's getting a full star just because of the ridiculousness that at least got our attention.
And how you and I have gone 23 years without knowing that this scene existed.
This is the kind of thing that should be legendary. Mm-hmm. I don't know how we missed out on this.
Like it is. the only thing that came to my mind when I saw the different colored teddy bears at the table was like the Batman, the 1969, 66 was when, you know, like when they turn all the guys in the boardroom into like powder, and they're all different colored powder in there. That's what it reminded me of, but they were giant teddy bears. And it, literally caused me to scream out loud, "What the fuck?" And it was, and that was like, I just did not know, because like we just couldn't figure out what the fuck this film was, and it just did not, it never found its footing at all. But yeah, if you want to, I'm sure you could probably find the teddy bear scene online. I'm sure you could type in teddy bears, the Avengers
teddy bear,
YouTube, and you'll probably find it. So watch that for the ridiculousness of it, of seeing Connery dressed like a teddy bear. Don't try to watch this film. This is not a good movie at all.
If you do, I will say it's under 90 minutes, especially without credits. You're talking like 80 something minutes.
Yeah.
And it moves at a fast pace, but not in a good way. Like I said, it was moving through the movie like scene to scene pretty fast, to where I'm just like, we're like, what is going on? I realize, we're already a third of the way through the movie, and as far as we know, nothing's happened yet. But it hasn't seemed like a long time just because it's moving so fast. But I'm guessing this is another one of those where they kept editing it down and finally like, we got to stop editing.
Yeah, at one point we were like, did they forget about Connery?
Oh yeah, they left out entire
And then all of a sudden he pops in like the last 5 minutes, and it's like, okay, he's done. It's not. Is it on anything?
It's not.
Okay, don't try, guys.
Just look for the teddy bear scene.
Go watch. Yeah, just watch the teddy bear scene, and then go watch Monster Squad and What If on Prime. We are now going to Brian's pick. This is a film that he mentioned it to me, and I got like, I remember seeing this when I was a kid, but if you were to ask me what this film was about, I maybe might be able to give you bare bones. So it felt like a rewatch until I saw one scene, and I was like, oh, yep, I remember this movie now. This is a film that I think, to me, works better now than it did back then because of where the lead actor is in his career now than he was back then. And we are talking about I don't want to really call it a rom-com, but I would say it's more of a comedy than anything.
Yeah, it's a comedy. I mean, there is a romance subplot, but it's
not a huge part. But we're talking about the Robert Downey Jr. comedy, Heart and Souls. Heart and Souls came out August 13th, 1993, had a budget of $25 million, had a weekend opening of $4.3 million, which was number 6 its opening weekend behind The Fugitive in its second week. Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday, which almost was our stinker pick, by the way, in its first week. Rising Sun in its third week. The Secret Garden in its first week. And In the Line of Fire in its sixth week. And had a finished box office of $16.58 million. The one thing I remembered from this movie was the sidewalk scene where they all sing Walk Like a Man. As soon as that part happened, I was like, oh, I totally remember this movie now. You have Charles Grodin, who we just talked about a few weeks ago, because it was untimely passing. We got Kara Sedgwick, Artie Woodward, right?
Alfred Woodward.
Alfred Woodward. And Tom Sizemore. Did not know Tom Sizemore could sing, first off. That was a welcoming surprise. But there are 4 characters. I think it takes place like 1959. They all get on a bus together, and the bus crashes. And instead of rising up to heaven, they get kind of shot into a car where a baby's being born, Robert Downey Jr. And they basically kind of become the guardian angels to this child. And, we spend some time with the child when he's a kid, and we see that they kind of, are kind of basically all becoming parents to the kid, giving them, little snippets here and there to kind of make him a better person. But then we get to that situation where it's like, oh, he's got 4 imaginary friends. So they basically decide to make themselves disappear so that way they don't ruin his life. And then we fast forward to him as Robert Downey Jr., and he's kind of a douchebag. He's like, what is he, what is his job? Like, it's about bankruptcy. I know that, but it's like,
I don't know, some financial,
financial things about bankruptcy and all that kind of crap. But he's an asshole. He's dating the always amazing Elizabeth Shue, which obviously was a welcome surprise to Brian and I. And they find out that it's now their time to go to heaven. And they were supposed to, through all this time with Robert Downey Jr., was supposed to do the one thing that they never got to, was like their unfinished business. And they didn't realize it.
So they all died as a result of this bus driver. He's got in a bus accident. And so that's why, because they
technically, I mean, well, it's first off because he's watching the lady kind of pull around, but it's also Robert Downey's parents who also kind of caused the wreck as well because they kind of all veer.
But for whatever reason, it's like you said, because they died before they had unfinished business, and I guess because it wasn't supposed to be their time or whatever, they were given the second chance. So they were supposed to. They find out after, so they were attached basically to this new soul being born, Robert Downey Jr.'s character, and they're with him. They don't know why they're connected to him. The parents and school and that start thinking that he's got mental issues because of his imaginary friends, and that's why.
Well, it's mainly because of Tom Sizemore making him go to the racetrack. That's why.
So they disappear, like you said, because they don't want to ruin his life because no one else can see them. They don't realize that he's talking to these people. But then the bus driver shows up saying to the four souls, saying, "Okay, it's time to go now," and they're like, "What do you mean?" It's like, "You finished your business, didn't you?" And like, "Oh, nobody told us this. We're supposed to do this." So he gives them, what is it, like 2 days or something like that?
Not even 2 days. Like he just said one.
I think he said, "I'm going to need you." He takes them one at a time.
I need you one. I'm coming to get you.
Like, we need another soul, so you got to come now. Yeah. So that's what it is. But I don't know what got me into recapping the whole story. But
you basically recapped exactly what I just said.
Well, there are a couple holes I wanted to fill in there. That's all.
But basically, their whole thing is that they finally make themselves visible to Robert Downey Jr. again, and they basically have to take over Robert Downey's body to basically do these things. And watching Robert Downey Jr. pretend to be Kara Sedgwick and Alfre Woodard and Tom Sizemore and Charles Grodin is great. It's like, especially like the boardroom scene where he's Kara Sedgwick and he's just going like all over the place, which is such a fucked up thing that they did to him, because like you guys are supposed to protect him in a sense, but they really weren't supposed to protect him at all technically. But they just like, you're ruining his life during this one meeting, and like sexual harassment happens to both genders in that scene. But it's great watching, because Robert Downey Jr.'s comedy is always him just kind of being a snarky asshole, which he plays out really, really well. But in this, you're watching him kind of be more of a character comedian, which we saw in like Chaplin, which we talked about in our very, very first episode.
Well, this was like stage 2 of 4 of Robert's career. He like had the early years where he was showing up in Weird Science and Less Than Zero. And it's kind of his young career. Then he did Chaplin, and entered the second part of his career where he did some prestigious stuff like that. He did a lot of good rom-coms like this and Only You and some things like that. Home for the Holidays, which I love. Then there was kind of there's that rough period of his life where he's making some
like U.S. Marshal.
Not so great. He's U.S. Marshals in Gothica and a lot of weird movies, and not all of them are very good.
When he's having issues in his personal life.
He was having personal issues. Yeah. And then obviously the Kiss Kiss Bang Bang and Iron Man took off, changed his whole career. But this is kind of, like you said, that post-Chaplin era where, people would like take him a little bit more seriously and realize he's a good actor. So he can play someone with these different characters inhabiting him. Yeah.
Yeah, because he does great physical comedy playing both women. His performance as Alfre Woodard's character when they're trying to get into the B.B. King concert is fantastic. Especially him as Kara Sedgwick is fantastic. Him as Tom Sizemore, he's just basically doing that. But like, what's going on here? Kind of thing. But Charles Grodin, he doesn't really get to do a whole lot except for sing, which great performance by him in that one moment. I mean, he's singing the national anthem, but still, it's still really well done. But this is a movie it's a feel-good film. It really is, because it's about people finally getting to, like, the one moment with Alfre Woodard's character, her final thing, like that connection. Yeah, it's a little movie written, like, oh, what a coincidence that all this stuff happens. But still, it's a beautiful little moment for her character, because she's the one character that I felt like that had the most to lose out of all of them at that moment, whereas like Charles Gooden's character is basically Jamie Foxx's soul. Is he not?
Yeah.
It's basically the same character. And then Kara Sedgwick's character is just kind of doing her own thing, and she's realized, oh, I made a mistake, and then that happens. But Robert Downey's great in it. I wish Elizabeth Shue had more to do in the film, because she's just kind of she's just the girlfriend. She's just the girlfriend who really overreacts way too soon. Now, granted, obviously we don't know how much of the relationship this has been happening, but it's just like, wow, you got real angry real fast. Like, you need to kind of chill. But it's one of those things where Robert Downey's character, he's playing a douche, but when he starts to kind of figure out what his journey is through this film, his chemistry with these four characters and their friendship and the way they build through the film is really where the heart of the film is, with obviously Heart and Souls. And it works really well because you see the charm that Robert Downey Jr. has. He's a charming character. He can play an asshole, but he can also play a really great guy. He can also play a female really well too. But it's a lot of fun. And it was one of those movies that, like, as I was watching it, I was starting to remember pieces of it. And I was like, oh, I remember this film. I actually like this movie. And it was a welcome, like, comeback. And I had a lot of fun rewatching this film. And, like, it was bothering me because the little kid's adorable. That plays young Robert Downey Jr. And I'm like, because they play Walk Like a Man in the bathroom. And it's an adorable scene where the kid's dancing and singing with them. And I was like, where do I know this kid from? Because I know him from somewhere. And I was about to look him up. And then we get to the scene where they disappear on him. And he starts whining and crying. And I was like, don't leave me. I'm like, Santa Claus. I was like, immediately knew, like, he's Tim Allen's son in the Santa Claus, because he whines in that movie too. And it was just like, because I think the Santa Claus was like 1 or 2 years later. And I was like, oh, wow. Like,
all he had the next year. Yeah, it was 94.
Yeah, all he had to do was whine, and I immediately just remembered who he was from an instance. But he did a great job in the small part he had in the film. But yeah, I mean, they could have done a little bit more in the film to kind of maybe flesh it out. But I think for what they did, I really enjoyed this film. It's one of those, like you said, it's an early part of Robert Downey Jr.'s career, which a lot of people, like we talked about with Chaplin, they don't know Robert Downey post or pre, like, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang Iron Man. Because a lot of people didn't really pay attention to Robert Downey Jr. until Iron Man. Now, it's one of those movies, like, if you guys love Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, which who didn't, and you guys want to see that, hey, he's actually a really good, fun actor when he was younger. Like I said, when we talked about with Chaplin, Heart and Souls is definitely something to check out.
Yeah, this is actually, aside from, I mean, I love Iron Man, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, but this is actually my favorite era of him. Like I talked about Only You and Home for the Holidays. I'd also throw Soap Dish is actually a very funny movie, an ensemble movie I think people should see. But I love Robert Downey Jr. in this kind of phase of his career. And this is also the kind of movie you don't get to see a lot anymore, because it's like they make big budget spectacles or independent movies. And this kind of mid-range thing you don't see very often, or when you do, it's the kind of thing that goes like straight to VOD or something. And so this is just one of those movies. It's just a nice, fun, sweet movie, which I would ask more people to see, although it's kind of hard to find to see. I would also ask the people, this one thing in my entire lifetime of trying to push this movie on people is they either call it Heart and Soul or Hearts and Souls. It's one heart, 4 souls. Heart and Souls.
Yes. Yeah,
I'm sorry, it's pet peeve I had to get off my chest.
Yeah, because it was hard for me to find. Because I got to the point where it was my time to watch, and I was like, Brian, I'm having a hard time finding this without straight up buying like the DVD.
It's never been released on digital in it, so it's not on Vudu, it's not on iTunes, it's not on Amazon, it's nowhere. It is currently, you can watch it on like DirecTV and Stars, because like cable channels back before digital, they can get a hold of these movies to show them. But as far as like a digital rental purchase, it just doesn't exist. But find the DVD cheap in a used store somewhere. But
I agree, it is one of those things nowadays where this movie would be an indie or something that wouldn't get a theatrical release, because they don't think, because now theatrical releases is all horror or comic book movies or franchises. Like even now, like it's hard to get just straight up comedies anymore. We've talked about that, like Blockers, Game Night. Like there's not a whole, like Tag. Like name other comedies that have come out in like the last 5 years. That's like
even those feel like bigger budget comedies than these kind of smaller personal stories.
Yeah, it's just, we don't get movies like these anymore, and a lot of these movies were really fun and well done back in the 90s, and I really do miss those films. Like, give these movies a chance. Let them go out there and get that following. You know, like What If? What If was 2013. Rom-coms, they're starting to kind of come back, but rom-coms disappeared for the longest time, where they all, like What If, became indies because they didn't think there was money in rom-coms anymore. And I think these kind of movies also, they're nice films with a good cast, especially with Robert Downey, which at that time, he wasn't like mainstream actor. I mean, obviously with Chaplin, he was, got that prestige, but he wasn't like a box office smash like he is now, obviously. So probably not a lot of people would have gone. I would say probably Charles Grodin and Tom Sizemore were probably the big names of this film, outside of a young Robert Downey Jr.
At the time, I mean, I think almost everyone in this was recognizable, like Elizabeth Shue and some of these people, but there wasn't a big name in the movie.
Yeah,
even Tom Sizemore at the time was not a name. This is pre-Private Ryan, pre all that stuff. So
But yeah, try to find it if you can. It's an enjoyable film. It's a feel-good film. I was happy when the film ended, not because it was over, but it's because it made me feel good. And it was a solid Brian pick. It was one of those I was happy that Brian picked, and did not have a bad score to it. Unlike the Avengers, which also we didn't talk about that. The score of the Avengers is horrendous. But now
the least of its problems. That's
the least of its problems. But now we're going to move on to my pick, which was originally the feature, but we wanted to give What If the nod. This is hands down one of my favorite films of all time. This is easily a top 10 film for me. Brian also loves this film. I think most people love this unless they want to just be a troll, then they hate on this. I think most people just really, really love this film. It's endlessly quotable. It is rewatchable to the max. I've lost track how many times I've watched this film. How you said with So I Married an Axe Murderer, you watch it once every 2 years or something like that. I watch this movie at least 1 to 3 times a year because it is just so much fun. And of course, naturally, we're talking about Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Scott Pilgrim came out in August 13th, 2010, had a budget of $60 million, had a weekend opening of $10.6 million. It was number 5 its opening weekend behind The Expendables in its first week, Eat, Pray, Love in its first week, The Other Guys in its second week, and Inception in its fifth week. Had a finished box office of $48.9 million, $32.77 million domestic, and $16.14 million international. Clearly, the love for this movie did not reach its box office, because this is easily a film that should have had made $320 million easily. With as much love as this film has, $320 million should have been a very easy goal for this. This film, I mean, you got Captain America before he was Captain America. You got Superman in this movie. This cast is. Before I start going into a super long tangent, Brian, Scott Pilgrim.
So Scott Pilgrim, I mean, when this movie came out, I love the cast of it. Edgar Wright obviously had a string of great movies with Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz and that. This one came out, and honestly, when this first came out, I enjoyed it but didn't love it, and it's because, again, I talked about this and other things. Is I think at the time everyone's like, oh, it looks like a video game and it's so cool and you kill people and coins fall down, and there's people raving about it at the time, and the community I was kind of in at the time. People were a little overpraising it, and so I was like, it's one of those things I think I was just sick of hearing people talk about it. But as I've watched it more and more, I've loved it more and more and more. I think it currently is, it very quickly became a 5-star rating up for me on Letterboxd, and even then, it's moved further and further up my list of my favorite movies of all time every single time I watch it. Which, again, I was looking at my history; it's like at least every 2 years, sometimes more than that. Because this is a movie that every time I watch, I just love it more and more. And
it's because you find something new to love about it each time you watch it. Just when you think you figured out and you know everything about this film, there's either a new way of approaching it or some little twerk scene or act that they do in the film that you just didn't notice before, or something that just kind of makes it more whole for you. And that's what I love about this film.
Yeah, Edgar Wright obviously has taken his trademark style kind of to the extreme in terms of the way this thing is filmed. But honestly, because I picked up the graphic novels on which this is based after I saw the movie, and I'm pretty sure Edgar Wright basically used the panels of that thing like a storyboard. I mean, there are a couple story changes here and there and things. I think that's partially because this is one of those that they decided to make the movie before the actual series was done. but it's so faithful to not only the source material, the story and stuff, but even just the composition of frames. I can look and see that exact picture is this exact picture, and it's really cool the way that is. I actually sat and watched the movie one time with it, turning the pages as I watched the movie. But the cast obviously is a who's who of people we love. Mary Elizabeth Winstead, Alison Pill, I like, Anna Kendrick, of course, Aubrey Plaza, Chris Evans, Brandon Routh, Mae Whitman. The list goes on and on.
I mean, you forgot about Scott.
Well, Scott. Well, Michael Cera's actually a guy who I've never been like a huge Michael Scott fan. Michael Scott. Well, from that's the wrong name. Michael Cera. Michael Scott's The Office. Sorry. Because he was on Arrested Development, which I never got into the way a lot of people did. But I knew
That's because
who he was.
you've written and directed it, and you do, the voiceover for it, so it's fine.
But obviously, I liked him as Superbad, and he was kind of the kind of person I take on a project by project basis. So I wasn't like a Michael Cera fan, but I think he worked perfectly for the role here. But honestly, while he has his funny moments, he's the straight man in this movie for a large part to all the zany characters who surround him. But yeah, it's just a movie that the visual style is awesome, the story's awesome. It's got a lot of great music in it. I really can't say much more about it. I love it more every time I watch it.
I could talk for hours about how much I love
exactly.
it.
Right.
I mean, first off, Scott Pilgrim is an asshole. You're not supposed to like his character.
Oh,
he's a huge jerk. He's a Knives Chow, like justice for Knives. Knives did not deserve any of the shit she got in this film. I mean, she got her heart broken. She was nothing but a good girlfriend. She got her highlights knocked out of her hair, but she got avenged for that. Knives did not deserve anything that she got. If it wasn't for Mary Elizabeth Winstead's Ramona, I don't think any reason we would have ever sided with Scott in any of the things that he had to do. Obviously, Mary Elizabeth Winstead is Ramona Flowers. Perfect casting choice. She plays such a great job of playing too cool, but obviously damaged. And then when she actually has to show the emotions of her damage, does it in a way that works beautifully for the character to show that there's more layers to her character. Scott, also layers to his character. He is not necessarily really a douchebag. He had his heart broken and has kind of become a shell of himself and has been lashing out on other people because of that. And he needs to learn to love himself and respect himself. And as we see him grow throughout the film, all the villains, they're villains by association, but they were all wronged by Ramona in a way. And it's one of those situations where you could eventually maybe even do a spinoff of it where Scott has the evil exes because of how he wronged, Allison Pill's character and Knives and all this. I mean, we gotta also we don't want to forget about Ivy. Why am I blanking on her name? Brie Larson, who's awesome and does her own voice for the singing in this. I love her song in this film. I love Edgar Wright's direction of this. Just the way he shot this and the way he made the video game world work, like with the extra life.
It works as a video game come to life. It works as a comic book come to life.
Yeah.
The fight scenes, I love the way the
fight scenes are great. And each one is unique in its own style. You can have your favorite. Like, what's your favorite villain fight?
Oh, geez. Actually, I think my favorite has to be when actually Mary Elizabeth Winstead steps in against May Whitman.
And this is me being a total guy. To me, the hottest that Mary Elizabeth Winstead has looked in the entire film is when she catches May Whitman's foot, and they had like that freeze frame. I'm just like, oh my gosh, she looks so fucking sexy in that foot. I don't know why. It's just for some reason because it's like the confident, like I got this, and she makes them. Yeah, with May Whitman's. what's her name in it?
She's Roxy.
Roxy. You had a sexy face. It's just like, mine, of course, is Brandon Routh's Todd, because that whole sequence is amazing. I don't know how many times I've quoted, "You'll be dust by Monday." What? Well, cleaning lady. She dusts. And then, of course, you had the Thomas Jane cameo with the vegan police. There's so many iconic moments. Chris Evans' scene is fantastic because he eventually becomes Captain America. He was already Johnny Storm at that part, and Ralph has obviously already been Superman at that point. The Jason Schwartzman fight is great. Like I said, different and unique in its own way. The Yagasaki twins.
The Katata Yanagi twins.
Yeah, that scene. But the music, Garbage Truck. I have listened to Garbage Truck way more times than I should have. I love that song. Threshold is a fun song. I love Sex Bomb. I think they are great. We are Sex Bomb. We will make you feel so happy, excited, so. And like I even love oh god, I'm blanking on the name. The band they went against first.
Oh, I don't
Oh
remember.
god. They're like you know,
Those little 2-second songs. Yeah.
2-second songs, and then you know, Kieran Culkin's Wallace, fantastic. Like,
you know what? We have the greatest segue to this. Kieran Culkin in this movie, I swear to God, is young Robert Downey Jr.
oh, totally.
Oh,
Totally.
if anybody else out there has not noticed that, next time you watch Scott Pilgrim, which you should do on a regular basis,
Oh, absolutely.
when you watch Kieran Culkin, picture that as young Robert Downey Jr. He has the exact same style, and the way he talks, the way he acts, is the perfect kind of comedy, and it very much is that style for me.
Not a race, guys. This next song's for the guy up there. It's called "We Hate You, Please Die." I love this one. It's just
Did you read the email?
I skimmed it.
Uh-uh.
You will pay for your insolence. But it's just like you got to pull out the big L. Lesbian? I wasn't trying to trick anybody.
No word. Lesbians?
Lesbians. I love this film. There's so much to love about this film. It's iconically quotable. The fight scenes, like I said, are great. The acting is great. When you have Anna Kendrick, who's barely in the film, but is great in the film as well. I love also when he goes to the party and he shows up a scribble picture of a face. It's like, oh, that's Ramona Flowers. Tell me everything about her now. You know, all this kind of stuff. And then, of course, the whole Pac-Man thing. There's so much to love about this movie. There really is. From beginning to end, I love this movie so damn much. I can keep talking about it. We could literally do a whole episode just dissecting this film all the way down. We might actually do that.
We might.
And we would have a lot of fun with it. Yeah, if you guys have never seen Scott Pilgrim, you failed in life. You really should, because Scott Pilgrim has everything. It's got, like how we talked about Piggy and Sarah Marshall. It's a perfect breakup film. Because it helps them grow. This is another film that's like that, but it's surrounded by video game and comic book characters in a sense. This is all about fixing a broken heart, trying to find true love, dealing with that toxic relationship and moving on and stuff like that as well. There's so many little extra meanings to this film. A lot of people look at Scott Pilgrim and they think, oh, it's a fighting comic book or fighting, video game with, a bunch of names. No, there's so much layers to this story. And Edgar Wright does it perfectly, and the cast does it perfectly. It's colorful, it's flashy, and it keeps everything. No matter how many times you watch it, like I said earlier with Brian, you find something new. Whether it's a different joke that maybe hits differently now than it did when you watched it 5 years ago, to different little styles here and there. Everything about this film, every time you watch it, it feels like familiar but new at the same time, and is easily hands down one of my favorite films of all time. Like I said, I know we can keep talking about it, Brian. Is there anything else you want to add before I
No, the good news for any of you that have failed in life and not seen this is that you can watch it right now on Netflix.
And there should be no reason why you shouldn't watch this, and not only watch it, but watch it on repeat for as long as you can.
Absolutely.
Use it on Netflix. And if you should also have it on Blu-ray and 4K HD and digital and all that.
Because this is a great looking movie. Like it's so colorful and everything about it. The visual style is such a key part of this movie. I actually they've released a 10th anniversary. They put it back in Dolby Cinemas this year. It's a year late, but that's because it was supposed to happen last year, but pandemic and all. Oh my God, it was amazing to see back in the big screen again. So
yeah, and like I said, the soundtrack is great as well because, like I said, Garbage Truck. I just love that song. And if there's one thing you need to learn from Scott Pilgrim is bread makes you fat. But that is our episode, guys. We hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Bread makes you fat? I was surprised we didn't quote this movie that much more while we were talking because we do that a lot. But we hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Movie Crusaders. If you guys did, go hit that like, share, and subscribe button to the channel. And stay updated with all the latest videos pop up on Movie Crusaders. And of course, remember to follow us on all the social media outlets you see below. If you guys want us to do, we're probably going to do it regardless. But if you guys want to see a Scott Pilgrim only episode, let us know. Because we would love to do it. And we won't have issues with it. But coming up next, Free Guys review. That should be out now or coming out within the next day. Don't Breathe 2, I still don't know if I'm going to watch that yet or not. I'm still kind of waiting on word of mouth on whether or not I want to give that a shot, because I think the first film is, like I said, great, and it's kind of its own little perfect way, and I think the sequel just does not feel needed. Next week, what's coming out next week?
Oh, I don't get out next week. Oh, jeez.
Yeah, what comes out next week? I'm blanking.
I don't know. I know there's Reminiscence. I know hits theaters and HBO Max on the 20th. Besides that,
yeah, I totally just like put Brian on the spot.
Yeah, Night House, Reminiscence, and The Protege are the movies coming out next week.
So yeah, not really a whole lot really coming out.
I mean, movies that look good, but nothing we're gonna do like huge spoiler reviews on.
No. Free Guy obviously is this week, but I don't think
Respect is this week as well. Although it actually opened and limited, I think, last week. But,
yeah, I don't know if I'll see Reminiscence or not. I mean, it seems like a film I would see because
it's The Greatest Showman too, right? It's got
exactly. It's got Rebecca. Yeah, it's got all of them in it. But we will definitely be back next week with another episode of the Weekend Crusaders, where Brian and I will talk about 5 movies that came out during that weekend in movie history. This is going to be an episode.
This is going to be an episode. There's
potential of like so many stinker potential in this, but we unabashedly like some of these films. Our feature film is a film that Brian and I love, but it's probably considered a shit film by a lot of people, but we like it. My film is a shit film that I'm making Brian watch. You need to check this out. It's not a good movie, but I liked it as a kid, and I will probably not like it when I watch it now, but I liked it when I was a kid. Brian's movie is another film that I think when I first watched it, I was fine with because I had issues with the leads. But I actually am kind of excited to go back and recheck this out because I think maybe I'll like it better now than I did back then. Our Revisited is a horror classic that I want to say I've seen, but I don't know if it's because I've actually seen it or if I just seen like clips of it, obviously the iconic clips. Mm-hmm. And our stinker.
Oh boy. Neither of us have seen this movie.
No, I've seen this movie.
Oh, you saw this movie.
I saw it as a kid.
I had only heard about it and known about it. I've seen pictures of it.
I saw this as a kid and knew this movie was bad. Brian chose to watch this movie because I showed him a trailer for this and I want to say something else. And you're like,
it's this.
We gotta watch this. I'm like, do you really want to though? You're like, oh, we're so watching this. I'm like,
you can't not think this is the stinker of the week.
This is gonna be so bad. It's gonna be so bad. So this is gonna be a really weird episode coming next week. So stick around. Hope you guys tune in. We hope you guys enjoy this episode. And until next time, in case we don't see you, good morning, good afternoon, and good night, Movie Crusaders.
You're still here? It's over. Go home.